recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it. If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist. If a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations labeled communist by the Department of Justice, she may be a communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States, she may be a communist. If a person does all these things over a period of time, he must be a communist. But there are other communists who don't show their real faces, who work more silently.
Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to take a look at a topic in American history called the Red Scare. Americans were freaking out about the possibility of communism taking hold inside the United States. And we're going to look at three major aspects of this. One was government investigations of potential disloyal communistic behavior in Hollywood, of all places. We're going to look at actual Soviet spies operating inside the United States government. And we're going to look at a senator from Wisconsin named Joseph McCarthy who spread fear and hysteria, pointing the finger at people, accusing them of being communists. And a big question for us today, were Americans justified in being afraid of the spread of communism inside the United States? Or was all of this what we might call a witch hunt? So let's get started.
As promised, today we're going to take a look at three aspects of the Red Scare. For each of these, you're going to do part of the reading and jot down some notes in this graphic organizer right in this column. And then you're going to watch a short little video about this topic and jot down your impressions. At the end of this, you're going to have a chance to write a position statement. Do you think the actions taken by the government during the Red Scare were necessary to protect Americans from a communist threat? The first thing we're going to look at today is something called anti-communism investigations. You're going to start by reading about something called loyalty review boards. These were established by President Truman to investigate government employees for potential communist influence. And you're going to be learning about something called the House Un-American Activities Committee, which investigated, of all places, Hollywood to determine whether or not communism was infiltrating the American film industry. And one thing I'd like you to be thinking about as you read this and watch the video, did America go overboard in these investigations, or was this justified?
At home, Americans feared red subversion. Congress revived the House Committee on Un-American Activities. In 1947, the committee investigated Hollywood, factory of America's imagination.
Have you ever observed any communistic information in any scripts?
Well, I have turned down quite a few scripts because I thought they were tinged with communistic ideas. They haven't attempted to use me, I don't think, because apparently they know that I'm not very sympathetic to communism.
There has been a small group within the Screen Actors Guild which has consistently opposed the policy of the Guild board and officers or the Guild itself as evidenced by the vote on various issues. That small clique has been referred to, has been discussed as more or less following the tactics that we associate with the Communist Party.
If I had my way about it, they'd all be sent back to Russia or some other unpleasant place.
10 witnesses, the Hollywood 10, defied the committee's right to ask about their beliefs.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
It's unfortunate and tragic that I have to teach this committee the basic principles of Americanism.
That's not the question. The question is, have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I'm framing my answer in the only way in which any American citizen can frame his
Then you
answer to
denied-
a question
then
which
you-
invades his absolutely invades
Then
his
you
right.
deny you refuse to answer that question. Is that correct?
I have told you that I will
All right.
offer my beliefs, my affiliations, and
Excuse the
everything
witness.
else
Excuse the
to the
witness.
American public, and they will know where I stand, as they do from what I have written.
Stand away
I
from
have
the
written
stand.
for Americanism for many years, and I shall
Stand
continue
away from the
to
stand.
fight for the Bill of Rights, which you are trying to
Take
destroy.
this man away from the stand.
Others from the film industry demonstrated their support for the constitutional rights of the Ten.
Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I believe I have the right to be confronted with any evidence which supports this question. I should like to see what you have.
Oh, well, you would.
Yes.
Well, you will pretty soon. The witness is excused.
Either you completely cooperated with the committee, which meant saying yes or no to the question about whether you were a communist or ever had been. And if the answer was yes, as it was in my case, we knew the next question was who else was, and we certainly didn't want to go into that.
The 10 were imprisoned. With hundreds more, they were blacklisted, their livelihoods taken away.
The second aspect of the Red Scare we're going to take a look at today were spy cases involving allegations of communist spies inside the U.S. government and inside the United States nuclear program. And again, I'd like you to be thinking as you read this and watch the video, did America go overboard, or was the concern about communist spies justified?
Americans feared that the enemy would take advantage of their freedoms, that agents of communism were undermining America. A Soviet spy ring unearthed in 1946 led investigators to Alger Hiss, who had been a wartime foreign policy advisor. He was accused of passing secrets to the Soviet Union by a former communist, Whittaker Chambers.
Have you ever seen this individual who is standing?
I have.
Do you know him?
I identify him.
In 1935 was the last time that you saw him.
According to my best recollection, not having checked the record.
Now, will you remain standing a moment, Mr. Hiss? Do you know?
Hiss firmly denied that he had betrayed his country.
New evidence of communist activities in government circles is promised by the House Committee on Un-American Activities. Microfilm reportedly found in a pumpkin on a Maryland farm is examined by investigator Stripling and Congressman Nixon.
Richard Nixon, an ambitious young Republican, was convinced that Hiss was lying.
It is the intention of the Committee on Un-American Activities to pursue this investigation until we put the spotlight on those high officials in the State Department who are responsible for selling this country down the river.
Hiss was jailed for perjury. Nixon's name was made. He turned his crusade against communism into a weapon for Republicans.
The last aspect of the Red Scare we're going to look at today is something called McCarthyism, and the man associated with it, Joseph McCarthy. As you read and watch this video excerpt, I'd like you to think about whether or not McCarthyism had any justification, or if this was just hysteria. We're going to watch a short video clip featuring Joseph McCarthy, and I do want to give you a little intro to this. The statement he's giving here is just after China adopted communism in 1949. To many Americans, this was seen as a total disaster for the United States, and people started pointing fingers inside the U.S. government, people to blame for the quote-unquote loss of China to communism.
Republican Senator Joe McCarthy blamed traitors in the State Department for the loss of China. He launched his own witch hunt.
Today, the most dangerous enemy agent is not so much concerned with the secret information about weapons as he is with infiltrating the necessary departments of the government and shaping and controlling the actions of our nation so that the enemy is progressively winning without even firing a single shot. Now, I intend to name names. John S. Service. And remember that name, if you will.
I have never knowingly transmitted any information which was, shall we say, secret military plans.
Service was hounded out of the State Department.
I had trouble renting homes, renting an apartment in New York. And the companies, well, what did our stockholders say, you know? So the companies that I had known and had dealings with abroad, export companies, they said, sorry, we think you're a fine guy, but we don't dare touch you.
One communist. One communist on the faculty of one university is one communist too many. One communist among the American advisors at Yalta was one communist too many. And even if there were only one communist in the State Department, even if there were only one communist in the State Department, that would still be one communist too many.
President Truman tried to dismiss McCarthy's attacks.
Not a single person who has been adjudged to be a communist or otherwise disloyal who remains on the government payroll today. We're not going to turn the United States into a right-wing totalitarian country in order to deal with a left-wing totalitarian threat.
But leaders of the American Communist Party were jailed, and the persecution spread. Left-wing labor organizations were banned, radical groups indicted, demonstrations broken up.
So the last thing I'd like you to do today is to write a summary paragraph. Do you think the actions taken by the U.S. government during the Red Scare were necessary to protect Americans from a communist threat?
I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson today. When we come back here next time, we're going to look at the moment in history when the world probably came closer than ever to the brink of nuclear war. Until then, I hope you guys are doing your best to stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you soon.